Hello, and thank you for joining us again today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson, where we're so passionate about bringing inspirational leaders from around the world, Christian leaders in business, in church ministry, in the marketplace, who are doing great things for the glory of God. We want you to hear their stories, hear their lessons learned, hear their journeys, and be inspired to take your personal leadership to the next level. I'm confident that every single leadership episode is going to inspire you to be the very best that you can be. Now, I really encourage you to go back and listen to previous episodes. Like, we've done so many interviews now, men and women from across the world who are doing great things for God. Go back and listen to the interviews. You can check out our page at www.therisinggenerationpodcast.com or go to our iTunes page and listen there if you're on Apple, or our Stitcher page if you're on Android, and listen to our previous episodes. There's some great nuggets of wisdom waiting there for you. Also ask that you go to our iTunes page or Stitcher page and give us maybe a 4 or 5 star rating if you enjoy the podcast. And the more ratings you get, the more we go up the rankings, and of course the more listeners that we'll get. And so we'd really appreciate your help with that. Now, if you're listening today as well and you get some kind of, you're going to be stirred and you're getting some questions that are coming up for you and you want some more support, please feel free to email me directly. And my email is errol@errollawson.com. Email me and we do a question, and I'll be happy to offer you some support if I can do. Or maybe you want some coaching. And what we're doing right now is we're offering a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with anybody out there. Maybe you're a leader, you're a pastor, you're a lay leader, you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, and you want some coaching around an issue or a question that has arisen for you as you've been listening to the podcast. So please feel free to email me. We'll get you booked in. If you're wondering what coaching is, it's not counseling, it's not mentoring as such. It's more me sitting down with you, whether in person if you're local or over Skype, and to simply have a conversation and asking you questions to help you get the clarity you're looking for in your business, ministry, or with an idea you're working on right now. Yeah, so it's completely free of charge, no obligation at all. But feel free to email me at errol@errollawson.com and we'll get you booked in right away. All right, so get ready to enjoy this next episode. I pray that you'll enjoy it, and please share with your friends or your colleagues or someone you think might also benefit from hearing this great interview. Thank you for listening again. God bless you. Hello and welcome again to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. And today our special guest is Todd Gongwer. Todd Gongwer is the author of Lead for God's Sake. He's a husband, a father, entrepreneur, former college coach, and aspiring janitor who is passionate about helping others discover their purpose in leadership and in life. His expertise in the areas of leadership and team dynamics come from over 25 years of a wide range of experiences spanning the world of business and athletics. He's held senior positions in companies ranging from entrepreneurial startups to public entities, while also serving as an assistant college basketball coach for one of the winningest small college programs in the country during the 1990s. Since writing Lead for God's Sake, Todd speaks, teaches, and coaches on the subject of leadership throughout the nation. The impact of his message has been featured in numerous publications such as ESPN, Yahoo Sports, Grantland, you name it. And he's now taking this message around the US and hopefully around the world. His powerful messages are impacting leaders from Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, major universities, professional sports teams, school districts, churches throughout the US of A. And Todd, I know there's so much you can say about you in your book, but Todd, just if you will, please fill in any gaps for us in your biography there and give us a glimpse into what you're up to right now in the world.
Well, again, my focus kind of has been since day one with this book. The book, just to back up a little bit, I never intended to write this book as a I guess you should call it more traditional leadership book, I never intended to write it as a parable, I should say. My intention from day one was to write this thing as a traditional step 1, step 2, step 3 leadership book. And as you mentioned, coming from a background of being in all levels of the business world, from entrepreneurial startup all the way up to public company, and executives in all those different levels, and then also having the experiences in the sports world, I developed a tremendous passion for the subject of leadership. And I actually went on in the 90s, I actually went on this obsessive, looking back now, kind of crazy journey of leadership study. And my goal was to read 500 books on the subject of leadership. So I was reading every spare minute I had.
What motivated that? Where did that come from? Like, no who's to stand and reads 400 or 500 books on leadership?
Yeah, I know. Well, first of all, because I was coaching a small college basketball program, I was assistant coach, I kept my day job. So I was in the business world with both feet. And actually, because of the success we were having in this small college, this basketball team, I was really in that with both feet too. And I was running hard in both worlds. Right. And I was also seeing the tremendous challenges and really how much of the success, how many of the things that really we were dealing with in both worlds were contingent upon, this leadership and the subject of leadership and human dynamics that goes with that. So with that in mind, I really, just continued to, I actually sat down with an author that I had read a few of his books. I really liked what he had written. And I sat down with this guy, and he was the one that actually was like, if you read 500 books on any subject, you're considered an international expert. Now, I don't know if I haven't validated that, and I'm not sure how much truth there actually is to that. But back in that time, I was seeing so much of the leadership dynamic going on around me, and I just had this insatiable appetite to grow on this in the subject. So studied and actually began to eventually write my own philosophies as I was kind of pouring in from the experiences in business, experiences in sports, plus all of the reading, and put those three things together, and it just really developed within me a passion to continue to.
Was there a goal that you had in mind?
Yeah, like I said, the one goal was to read 500 books, but probably more
to
than
what
anything
end?
else. Yeah, well, again, like I said, back then it was kind of, if you read 500 books, you become an international expert in leadership. And so I thought, okay, that's a good goal to shoot for, And again, in hindsight, that wasn't necessarily the best thing. I mean, it didn't have a lot other than, it did drive me. It did serve as a little bit of a driving force. But that's kind of what got me at least on the path. Once you begin to get into the subject a lot more, and as I began to have more and more opportunities to actually teach it and help others in the subject, I think that's when it really begins to become much bigger than a goal like I just mentioned. It becomes about people, it becomes about relationships, and really helping people see what's really important in life, and really how much the subject of leadership is so intertwined in everything that we're doing.
And it's really powerful, I say for those that are listening as well, like the link I'm hearing here is between leadership and our effectiveness. And at some point in your journey, it sounds like, Todd, you recognize that for you to be more effective in both camps that you were in, leadership was the key differentiator. So you went after it hard. And for those who are listening as well, we've said before, like our leadership lid that John Maxwell talks about, when we lift our leadership lid, our effectiveness in everything else that we do is also impacted. And Todd, on your journey of leadership development and pursuing this goal of becoming a better leader, what's been your biggest challenge?
The time constraint, I think, is probably the biggest, because I have, as I mentioned a little while ago to you, and when you and I were talking before this, I have a young family. I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old that we actually just adopted from Haiti last year. And so our family life, home life, is crazy because of the subject of leadership. And this goes along with, John Maxwell teaches a lot about the influence thing. I always teach that leadership is influence from your words, attitudes, and behaviors that flow ultimately from your character. Well, if that's the case, influence from our words, attitudes, and behaviors, that's happening all the time. It's happening at home. It's happening at work. It's happening in our churches or schools or wherever we are, and really at whatever stage of life we're in. So for me, the challenge in that is, I have got to maintain the proper leadership, the best leadership, and be my best at home with my family, while at the same time trying to pour into other people. Because if I, I've always said, and this is the message in the book too, if you can accomplish some of the greatest tasks or win some of the best awards in this world has to offer, But if you do it at the expense of the people that God has closest to you in your life, they're there for a reason. You never really were your best. I believe your best has to do with really making sure those priorities are right, and it kind of goes out in concentric circles with our family and the people that, all the other people that God puts in our path along the way. And that's the biggest, I know that in theory, and I teach that everywhere I go about that priorities, get your priorities right and make sure that relationships are right, obviously with Christ first and others, but man, it's a challenge.
What's your advice to someone listening who's saying, Todd, Errol, I want to be a great leader, I want to grow in my leadership, but I'm having that same battle with time to invest in myself and to invest in those around me. What do I do?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think, one of the very, very important things is, at some point, I think it's important to take a step back and really, evaluate, really do a deep evaluation and reflection on your life, not only who you are, who you want to become, and why you're here on this earth. And if we go back to that foundation of why we believe, and for me, again, my foundation, my faith is very important. So I believe God has us here first and foremost for those relationships. And the ones that I talked about, that are closest to us, they're there for a reason. And sometimes those are the most difficult, but they're still there for a reason. So I think it's really important to, reflect on why are we really, who do I want to be and why am I really here on this earth in the first place?
That's great.
And then the other thing I would say is for me, I always talk about the 6 months to live rule. And I had some kind of scary moments back when I was in my early 30s in terms of health scares. And those times really taught me to take a step back and go, now, wait a minute, what if I get the news and I only have 6 months to live? You see, we can't live like we're going to die tomorrow, because the reality is I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. No offense, but if I was gone tomorrow, man, I'd be at home with my family. But if we get 6 months, it changes everything.
Right.
Because we pour so much more into things like this, and we pour so much more into those relationships that do mean the most and should mean the most. Our relationship that has to do with eternity, and all those relationships really around us that have to do with eternity too. Those are the things we take with us, and those are the things we leave behind us.
Right.
And so that's the really important part of really trying to prioritize for me, is reminding myself all the time of that 6 months to live rule.
Wow. And has there been like a significant turning point in your journey where maybe you were going one direction and maybe you got a revelation or an event happened that caused you to say, you know what, I'm going that way?
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually in 2002. And, it was a culmination of a lot of different things that were going on at that time that we don't have time to go into all the details, but let's just suffice to say it was a crash and burn time in my life. It was a time where really for me, as I reflected on my life, it was kind of like, man, nothing that I thought I wanted to accomplish by this time in life have I accomplished. Nothing, it was kind of like I was running 100 miles an hour and I was pursuing this and pursuing this and pursuing this. And yet nothing had become what I thought it was going to become.
Wow.
And I had, there was emotionally, financially, physically, there was a lot of things that I just worn myself ragged. And I had a kind of a time where I was going back to that why question. Why am I here? Why do I do what I do more than anything else? Why do I do what I do? And I began to realize how, my amazing capacity to deceive myself.
Wow.
And how I the things that I had been pursuing, I could always put the right labels on them. But, as I reflected on it, I was like, you know what, Todd? This really isn't about those people that you say it was about. It really isn't about being, an example in your faith. It really isn't about whatever other reasons I had put in place for coaching as an athlete, playing in the business world, a leader in the business world, building what I was trying to build, all those things. It was like I finally opened my eyes to the hidden agendas, the real motives of the heart. And I went from asking the question why, realizing how elusive the question, why do you do what you do is, to why am I here on the earth? And why does God have me in the first place? And my eyes, I again, I had a kind of there was one specific moment where I was on my knees, really struggling, and was kind of just really kind of calling out to God, why am I here? And my son, who was 2.5 years old at the time, walked in the door. And for me, it was kind of a really quick answer. It was kind of that answer that I'd been looking for. It was like God saying, Todd, why are you here on this earth? You're thinking of, gosh, what am I supposed to accomplish? Gosh, I've got to make this big impact. I've got to build this big platform. I've got to make this big all these things that I'd always thought in my life were why.
Wow.
And what he said was, look at this little 2.5-year-old boy that looks just like you, Todd. That wife of yours that you've been coexisting with at the time for 8 years, you need to, these are the things that are why I have you here, Todd, in my relationship with you. So that was my real eye-opening moment in life. And that was the time where, as you just asked me, you said you were going this way, and you went, I really threw up my hands at that time. I said, I'm not.
So what did you do? What when you had that revelation, what changed? What did you do or stop doing?
You know what? It's a process. I don't believe that, even though you go through moments in time like that may, what I call a jolt to perspective, it opens your eyes to things that you once knew or in the back of your mind knew, but you really weren't taken seriously. I took it seriously from that point on. And I, that 6 months to live, the priority thing, that changed immediately. That was, I really opened my eyes to that change in my life. My prayer life changed. I went from, adamant, asking, talking, to really opening my eyes to the importance of taking the time to be quiet and listen. Just really listen. Began to value people differently. It used to be on my schedule and what I wanted to accomplish, and didn't really value the divine opportunities that we get all the time. And those opportunities usually come at the most inopportune times, by the way. You know what I mean? We're busy, we're running, and someone walks into our office or someone walks in and wants to talk, it's, these are the tests, in my opinion. These are the tests of what's really important. Do people really matter to you? And so those are some of the key things that I think changed.
Wow.
Right then and there. And it's a process.
Yeah.
I fall back all the time, but that's those are some really important things to me.
Thank you for sharing that, man.
Are you seriously fired up about developing leaders and growing your church to the next level? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity, or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in increasing your performance and dramatically increase the results you achieve. Errol is an experienced leadership coach, award-winning author, an entrepreneur, and pastor. He has interviewed over 60 of the most influential Christian leaders from around the world for the Rising Generation Leadership podcast, and uses his unique insights, leadership experience, and his passion for the gospel to coach Christian leaders and help them to discover the clarity, confidence, and competence they are looking for. If you're ready to go to the next level, leverage Errol's experience and extensive network of contacts to help grow your ministry or support you in your personal and professional development. To experience the power and benefit of Errol's coaching, contact us now to arrange a free 30-minute strategy session that will help you to understand exactly what your next step needs to be. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
And now at this stage in your journey, which is 15 years almost on, 13 years from that time, how do you now at this stage define success?
That's a great question, and such an important question. We should be asking that question of ourselves almost daily. I mean, and here's why. Our culture is defining it to us minute by minute.
Wow.
Every time we go online, every time we look at Facebook, there are definitions. We see how many people liked our post, and we see how many followers we have, and how many people on Twitter, and all these other things. And these things aren't inherently wrong, in and of themselves, but they're dangerous because they become they become the definers of success in our culture. How many people do you have looking at your YouTube, whatever it is. And those are, and the status thing, what we own, what we've accomplished, how big our house is, what kind of car, all those things. So I think that's where I go back to saying, when you ask me that, it's such an important thing. It needs to be defined every day, or redefined and talked about or thought about in our minds. For me, it's a reminder every day that, Todd, it's, someone asked me that. We're working on a movie right now for the book.
Oh, wow.
And there was a person that's part of the production, or wanting to be part of the production process in this thing. And we were having this discussion, and one of the things that this individual asked me, she said, well, where do you want to be in 5 years from now? The first thing I said is, well, I want my son to be, have a heart after Christ. I want him to be focused on the right things and to be, healthy in his identity, not just in athletics, but in who he really is and who he was meant to be on this earth. And I want my daughter, and I started listing these things of where I wanted my kids and how I wanted my family, with my relationship with my spouse to be.
Wow.
And this was, and I got done with all that. And I said, then after that, I hope the journey book continues to be successful.
Right.
And that's about it. I hope I continue to have open doors where I can go in and impact lives and be a positive influence on people. And, I want to start, we're going to start doing a lot more. I'm going to start being a lot more intentional, coaching people and trying to pour into people on an individual basis. Even it's been hard for me to do that. I'm trying to work on ways that I can do that better. I need to travel less, so all of those things are flowing through that. Well, Todd, what is success to you? Well, you heard me talk about, my family, faith, those relationships and all those other relationships that God puts in my path. That's success, man.
It's great, man. And I think it was John Maxwell that said that success is hidden in your daily routine. Typically, what does the first 90 minutes of your day look like? And I'm
90.
90, yeah. 90.
90 minutes, okay. Yeah. 90 minutes. I am what I would classify as and I learned this 15 years ago, really 13 years ago, I started. I'm a slow starter, and I don't mean that I get up early, but I want to gather my thoughts in the quietness of the morning. And so I spend time, usually I'm the first one up in my family, and I spend time in the Word daily. I really try to spend just some quiet time in prayer and even in listening. Just sometimes I'll sit in a chair in the living room and just try to listen to God. What do you got for me? Where do you want me to go with this decision or that decision? And so my morning time is really, obviously I eat in the morning and get my coffee, but all of that, as I'm getting that stuff prepared, I like to really just kind of quietly center myself and not jump into the fray of my texts or, unfortunately I have a habit of seeing if I got any texts late at night or early in the morning that I didn't catch, and I try not to do that, but I do, but that's the first hour. From there, typically during the school season, I will stay home and I'll try not to leave the house until the kids have gone off to school. So at some point in that first hour to first hour and a half, the rest of my family is getting up. And I've made it a point, I want to be in that kitchen, and I want to, for me, because it's so important, and my family knows the importance of faith and staying in the Word and in prayer. Part of my desire for being in that kitchen in the morning, in that quiet time, I want my kids to see that every morning. I want my kids to get up and be around that for a little while as they're getting ready for school. And then when they come in there in their frantic rush to eat breakfast and get out the door, there's always interaction opportunities that I try to have as many possible. I'm on the road, somewhat frequently.
That's great, man. Like I said, are there any of the key habits that you've had to sort of implement into your daily routine for you to, you've come through what you've come through, you've built what you've built and are building still, and I'm sure you've got plenty of great projects you're working on right now. What have been the key habits you've had to implement into your daily routine?
I'll tell you one that I think is really maybe a little bit unique to me. I don't know, maybe it's not, but physically, I think it's very, very, very important to maintain our physical health,
right,
along with, the mental, spiritual, physical, all. They parallel and all feed off each other in a lot of ways. So the one thing, because my thinking time and writing time, I have the clearest thought process in the morning before probably, all the way up to maybe 1 to 2 o'clock. But typically all of the calls that I schedule, and obviously I don't do that with Skype calls. Maybe I do that. This would add an element of interest to this, but I try to schedule my calls in the afternoon. And a lot of times what I'll do is I have a treadmill, a Stairmaster, and an elliptical at home.
right.
And I'll go home and I'll actually make my calls while I'm on those three things so that I'm working out for a half hour to an hour almost every day. And at the same time, knocking out a few calls. Now, like I said, not every call can be scheduled that way, but I really try to push that off into the afternoon because I can't, like I said, I want my thinking time, my clearest thought process time when I'm writing in the morning, and then in the afternoons when I'm more interacting with people. And I can think clearly, but it's much easier to go from the heart when I'm talking to people.
And what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
Boy, my influence, when you talk about influence being at the core of leadership, I'll say if you're talking about a weakness in leadership, you have to take into consideration not only what you're struggling with, but how it's influencing others. And for me, I really try to do a lot of what I do differently. And I say that, I should say maybe unique and a little bit unique. I don't and haven't driven as hard after building the platform or trying to gain success as I did prior to 2002. Okay. I've tried to really walk slowly. And I've tried to, that day I kind of threw my hands up and I said, I'm not going to run through the brick walls anymore. I want to go through the open doors that you have for me. And as much as I try to maintain that process, that gets really, really hard when you're an author and you're a public speaker and you're teaching, because the world doesn't wait for people that don't go. You can build a lot of stuff on your own, and so it's really hard balance to know what is what's the balance between patience and persistence. What is the balance between where God's saying, I got this, will you trust me? Don't run yourself ragged, don't ruin your relationships, don't sacrifice all the things that I have in your life that are most important. Trust me to take care of this stuff for you. I'll put you in a better position than you'll put yourself in. Do I really believe that? You know what I mean? Because if I really believe that, then a lot of times at that 18th hour, not every time, because we do have to, maintain our balance and we do have to get things done. There's no doubt. We've got to work. But at the same time, there are many times when my young son, he's a preschooler, so he's home most of the time, and I can be working on something in the morning and ready to get out the door, and all of a sudden he's going, Daddy, will you come and build blocks for a second in their living room? That's that moment. That's that 6 months to live thing. And you go back to, okay, Todd, do you really have to go try to get these things accomplished? Because you'll always be behind, but you won't always have this little 5-year-old here.
What's the biggest strength?
Boy, I would say my biggest strength, I hope, is that I genuinely love and care about people. And I think when you have that genuine love and care for people, then how that plays out, it plays out in many, many different ways. It plays out in time that you give others and time that you give people that can't do anything for you. It plays out in a phone call or a text message or something that, just something little that may, again, I'm not always I definitely don't always do as good a job as I wish I did on it, but I know in my heart, I just have a genuine love for people. And I thank God and my mom for that. My mom's like, she just loves everybody. It's all about people, man. You could take every material thing away from her on this earth and she would care less. It's all about people. And I'm thankful that I'm not quite where she is, but I am thankful that in my heart, I'm a sensitive person, man. And I love people.
It's great,
I I hope that's a strength. I hope it's a great strength.
Was there anything at the beginning of your leadership journey that was holding you back from actually going into leadership? If there was, what might it have been?
I wouldn't, again, because I really define leadership as this influence from words, attitudes, and behaviors. I would just say that it didn't necessarily hold me back from leading or influencing, but my selfish attitude, my selfish agenda was probably more than anything else that affected the influence that I was having on people, because I would, you place people in categories of importance and you put the time, and not necessarily how they should be placed, but hey, can they do more for me? If they can do more for me, then they're going to be more important. And I think probably that for years and years and years, and it's always a battle in our culture, because we're all climbing some kind of ladder,
That's really honest, that is. I think, like you say, it's a massive, massive thing, because we can have leadership, like you say, a position or responsibility, and not have influence because of our attitude. And somebody who hasn't got leadership can have more influence than us because they've got a better attitude, towards people.
Right.
And it's a thing that I was reflecting this today, about me at primary school. I had a friend at primary school who, on my primary school report, it says Errol was a leader. He's a leader amongst his peers, But I always remember, I had a friend, my best friend at the time, Daniel. He was this kid that was so popular. We were like this duo. I was one who was a leader. I'd be organizing stuff, saying, let's do this. Come on over here, everybody. Let's do this. And I'd be that kind of guy. But he had everyone following him. He had the influence, but I had the leadership. And people weren't following me like they were following him. Even as he grew older, it was the same pattern. I recognized that, you know what? That's really interesting, Daddy, because he had influence, not leadership, but influence. And I had leadership, but not as much influence. And it's our attitude towards people, I think. I think you're right. I think you're spot on.
Yeah. And I think, and again, like I said, you're one of the first things I tell people when we talk about the subject of leadership is always one of the most important questions you should ask yourself is, what does it really mean to me? Because I think if we start off with defining it more than anything else, because what you just described there is so true, because a lot of times we'll look at the hierarchy as that's leadership, or we'll look at the intentional nature of what I'm doing in terms of organizing and pulling a group together or whatever. We'll look at different aspects of leadership and say that's what it is. The reality is, when we broaden the scope of what it means to include this friend that you talk about, Daniel, right? So he's influencing people with his words and attitudes and behaviors. So he's leading. In essence, he's leading. He's leading. And so, the key is, okay, once we define that and we recognize it, then we go, okay, wait a minute, there's no pass outs. When I talk to young people all the time, I'm going, hey, every single one of you has the opportunity to do what Daniel was doing. The question is are you going to become intentional with it? And are you going to make sure that it's in the right ways? It's not just because you're a funny, popular dude, because that can happen. I always tell coaches, man, you guys think it's just your seniors and your juniors that are leading on the team. And that freshman that sits on the back of the bus that never gets in the game, that's hilarious. He's influencing. So in essence, he's leading.
Right.
Now, he's not necessarily leading how you want him to, but you better pay attention to him because he's influencing the guy. He's leading people down a path.
Come on.
So anyway, that's I think it's so important to define it.
Okay. So we're almost done now, right? Who've been your most significant mentors on your leadership journey?
The coach that first and foremost, more than anything else, both my parents. I can't put one above the other because they both played such a significant role. And my dad was hardworking, hard driving, type A business guy that just taught me so many great things about how to do business in the right ways and so many different elements of that. And my mom was, as I described a little earlier, this people person. I mean, that's just the best. Everything is about people, and so that was a pretty good mix. I think they mentored and really influenced me significantly. And then beyond that, I was an assistant coach at this college for 12 seasons, and the head coach there was just I mean, he to this day is one of my very best friends, but just was a tremendous, tremendous influence on my life for a long time, and just really kind of modeled the type of behavior that there's no doubt, so many things about him that I wanted to be.
What was the best piece of advice that you received, first of all, from your dad and from your mom, and then from your coach?
Well, it's hard. That's a really, really tough one, because I go back and I go, man, I mean, it's, once again, sometimes I think we overestimate the instances of, the one moment instances, and we underestimate what they modeled throughout the course of their lives.
Sure.
Like I said, my mom, things like, there's no such thing as a half-truth. Half-truth is a full lie.
Right.
People are the most important thing. I don't remember any specific statements that she made, but she just was, I remember going to visit, we had some relatives or I had a great aunt, I think it was, that had the Parkinson's disease. I remember going to the home to visit her a lot. I remember going to my old, my 95-year-old grandmother's house at the nursing home a lot with her. I mean, she was just always taking us places like that to pour into others. Again, like I said, my dad, his advice was, there was all kinds of things, but it was always his model. He worked very hard and always was very, very driven in what he was doing and doing it the right way. The coach, man, he would teach, he would talk to the team every day before practice. So you talk about 12 years, you're talking about literally thousands of practices over the years. And he would always have a little message, a little nugget of advice and wisdom. So there's so many great things, but I can remember, like, if I pull back and say, what did I get from him? Man, he had an uncanny ability to listen to people. He was just always engaged when you were talking to him, and you knew he was listening to you. And so that was something that really I pulled from him that I still work on to this day. It's really hard to be a good listener when you're always getting interviewed or you're always speaking on stage. It's like, how do you listen? Because it becomes almost a habit. But those are some things.
It's great, man. It's brilliant. And what you're most fired up about right now? What's the one thing you're most fired up about this very present moment?
I'm really excited. I think you heard me mention this before with the state of my family. I've got to figure out ways to expand my message without leaving the area. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like podcasts. So we've been working on for the last few months putting together some podcast stuff. And so that's one of the ways to get that message out there. I mentioned to you doing a lot more coaching. I'm really fired up. I love the one-on-one stuff more than anything else. Man. I love just hearing somebody's story and trying to help them.
It's great, man.
And so we're putting that stuff together right now. And I think that's going to allow me to still impact people without having to fly all over the place and be away from my family. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, I mentioned to you, we're really moving much, much closer to getting some movie stuff done with the book. And so I'm excited about the impact that'll have. It's great,
man. Is there a book or resource you'd recommend for a leader? Obviously, we recommend Lead for God's Sake. Is there any other book or resource you recommend for a leader? Up-and-coming young person or leader?
Yeah. It's crazy. This is somewhat of he's an author from the past. Is not as nearly as known, but he's got awesome stuff. His name's Og Mandino.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. You familiar with him?
Yeah.
I mean, he just tons of stuff. The Choice, The Greatest Success in the World. I mean, there's 4 or 5 really good books by him. Just little books that they're stories, but they're just he would be one of my definite favorite authors. As you know, Maxwell and Kim Blanchard and those guys all write great stuff too. But I'm kind of a fan. Maybe it's the older I get, but I've become more and more of a fan of a lot of the older stuff. The stuff that's been around for 50 or 60 years. Okay. Even from a spiritual perspective, stuff that A.W. Tozer has written. And there's just some deep, deep stuff I think is potentially tremendously impacting in one's life.
Amen to that. You were saying earlier, right, and we were talking about leadership and influence, and I shared the story of Daniel and what have you. And as you were talking just now, the thought came back to me to ask the question really, why do you think leaders are afraid to be vulnerable? There's something about the influence factor, or the attitude towards people, that when somebody's able to have a joke on themselves, laugh at themselves, be vulnerable with others, people are attracted to that. Why are we afraid to do that?
Man, I'll tell you what. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability, and you just hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, I just think people being real and being able to interact with people in a real way is so much more powerful. I think that because again, yes, people are attracted to that. Unfortunately, people are enamored by this. I don't know any other way to describe it as the stone wall, the Donald Trumps of the world.
Right.
That'll get up on stage and say, I have all the answers. Right. I know them. Right. You need to listen to me because I know what I'm doing and I'm going to the top. Right. There's this draw. Obviously, I mean, and I won't get into deep, but I mean, really, and there's a lot of other examples I could give in society where it's like people are just drawn to that.
Wow.
And so I think that more often than not, people go, well, let me put this shell on and maybe I can become like that instead of, being real and going, gosh, because the reality is we're all broken. Man, we are all, I'm so broken, so messed up in so many different ways. And I just believe personally, the more I try to hide that and cover that up, the less real I become and the less I'll genuinely impact people. They may have interest in, there may be more followers that follow me on Twitter.
Wow.
Something like that. But I just think the ones that are genuinely seeking answers, that's what they need. They need us all to be real. They need those of us that are speaking and that get the opportunity to get out there and write. And they need us to be real, genuine. And I don't have the answer for why more people don't, other than there's insecurities that our culture has just really, in our world today. So, wow. Yeah. But you bring up a really good, it's a good stuff.
Yeah. Hey, listen, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. I know we've gone a little bit over there, but, is there a place you can find out more about you? Do you have a website or a blog, or where should we go to find out more about the work you're doing?
The website is at leadforgodsake.com. All one word, LEADFORGODSAKE, just one S. So that's where you can kind of see everything. From time to time, the information on the book, obviously, and speaking and stuff is on there, but you'll probably hear most from me. And again, there's a Lead for God's Sake Facebook page, and there's a Twitter account that you can follow me at Todd Gongwer on Twitter, and that allows. I'm not a huge fan of social media, but it is what it is. It's where we are today. So I am a fan of trying to use it for the right reasons. And so, I try to be very encouraging and positive in both those formats. So you can find out more both of those places. So
it's great. Folks, you've been listening to Todd Gongwer today. And Todd, I really appreciate your time. Guys, if you're listening, go and check out Amazon.com and look for Lead for God's Sake, or even get the book directly from Todd's website, leadforgodsake.com. Well worth the read. Todd, it's been amazing chatting to you. Thank you for your openness, for your realness, and that nugget right at the end there, just about being real. Like, as leaders, I reckon that this generation that we're trying to reach, they want us just to be real with them. Look for leaders who will just be real. Not be able to just bear all in a way and just say, hey, this is who we are, so they can connect with us on a real level too. Vulnerability attracts vulnerability. Love that, Todd. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, man. God bless you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Errol. I appreciate what you're doing and really, really appreciate the opportunity to share with you. Please stay connected, man.
Will do. Thank you very much, man. Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around the leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes, give us a nice review, that'd be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.